to another episode of The Ultimate Client Strategy. I'm Lisa Rosenthal, and today joined by my dear friend and colleague, Neil Levy. Welcome, Neil.
Hi, Lisa. How are you? Yeah, I guess the gray hair makes me look wiser.
Well, it looks much better on you than it does on me. Well, I'm excited for people to learn a little bit more about you and what you do. Your story, like most of us, right, is not linear. You've had great experience and you bring a lot of knowledge to what you currently do today. So why don't you give us a little background?
Sure. So currently I work for a firm called Gallagher. I'm an outsourced risk manager. So I work with companies, commercial companies, on mitigating risks in their businesses through insurance products. So it's a little bit different than what Jake and State Farm and Flo are selling as far as home insurance. I do only commercial.
Well, you're a far cry from
Right.
a State Farm.
Thank you. You kind of alluded to it. I've had a very unique background. I came from public accounting for a number of years, and then I was also an analyst at an investment bank, as well as in the hedge fund business. So all these things sort of lend itself to providing perspective that most insurance agencies can't provide from a risk management perspective. Like I've really built my career analyzing companies, which is what I do now from a insurance standpoint, risk standpoint.
That's
And
great.
as you know, nothing really gets done. I mean, everything in our economy is based upon taking risks. So any
Sure.
entrepreneur, and I'm sure you've spoken to many, I mean, it's all based upon risk. So you have to figure out how to mitigate them through insurance or not doing it or underinsurance.
Well, I think risk reward is a concept we all live with, whether it's a professional thought process and decision-making process or personal.
Right.
What's the reward and how much risk am I willing to take? Right? In your world, it's covering risk of business terms. So
Right.
that's very different. But I
Well,
don't think the concept's very different, right?
Right. I don't think that the concept is not different. However, I believe that many business owners unfortunately look at risk like they look at insurance as just a product that they need to buy. So even though it's becoming a larger expense on someone's P&L, even though that they know that risk needs to be mitigated, they often look at insurance as just sort of this thing that needs to be bought for a contract or for a lease per se. And they really need guidance. I think
Well, let's talk a minute about business owners because they're entrepreneurs, business owners. It's a unique thought process, different than your own personal insurance that you may buy for your car, your house, or for any other purpose, or any other, whether it's a boat, an airplane, private plane, whatever it is. For personal use is very different than a business owner's perspective on mitigating risk and what the pitfalls of being a business owner and not making the right call. What does that look like?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, I think a lot of times what happens is someone's purchasing insurance from a standpoint of it's required, right? It's a requirement for a lease or a contract. But I mean, a lot of businesses cannot afford even a baseless or frivolous lawsuit, right? Which could cost a business their whole business. I mean, millions of dollars to throw out a case or to or if a building burns down and there's no insurance coverage. So insurance is really just a levered way to finance risk. That's really all it should be viewed as, is just a levered play on risk that's inherent in your business. I mean, all business owners face it, right? So it's just a question of how they finance it.
And it's not just about the building you're in or the vehicles the business may own to run the business. I mean, it's key man insurance.
Well,
right.
And now it's getting into cyber insurance and error commissions type of coverages, all the professional liability coverages. So it's not just a physical asset. It could be, the knowledge behind it. Like you had mentioned key person insurance and things like that. So there are people responsible for, making rain within an organization or bringing in clientele that we have to protect those assets as well as reputational risk, or, even, I mean, there's very esoteric. There's risk everywhere.
Well, what do you think is the if you had to give advice to, an entrepreneur, what are the things you would not leave yourself exposed? Where are the areas that you would not leave yourself exposed, that you would make sure you were covered in today's environment? Because the answer probably was different 5 years ago, right?
I mean, obviously, cyber is a very big exposure. Everybody has some sort of presence somehow on the internet, whether it
Sure.
does not need to be e-commerce. It could just be simple information that's housed on the internet. And going back to our example of like a building burning down, right? I mean, now it could be a beautiful sunny day outside. If your network is down, you're out of business.
Right.
So I think that there's certain areas that I think any entrepreneur really takes a gut check and really says, what's going to keep me up at night? And is that a real exposure? And cyber is certainly one of them. I mean, I think with businesses now, I think we live in a very litigious world. So a lot of things may make sense just from a standpoint of protecting yourself from frivolous lawsuits or high litigation costs going.
Yeah, well, that's, I think, true in any market, right? Because the answer to the question I asked you could be different for a variety of different businesses, depending on what your exposure is. If you're somebody that deals with the public all day long, very different than somebody that's a B2B business where they may be providing a service, right? Versus a manufacturer who has products they're selling that has a whole different risk profile, right?
Exactly. And that's why, I think that unfortunately what happens in the risk management process, right, is people's renewals come up, the insurance comes up for renewal, and there's a scramble to get things done. And maybe there's, obviously the entrepreneur, the business owner is busy running their business from a day to day. You don't necessarily have time to really look into the risk side of it, right? But there really needs to be a sit down and monitoring of what's your appetite for risk. Like from a business standpoint, really understanding where my exposures are, what's my appetite for risk, what's my tolerance, and then starting to figure out like, well, what sort of risk can I give to somebody else via contract so I can make them hold the bag instead of me, right? And then at that point, the last thing you do is market your insurance.
Right. So, Neil, let's talk a little bit just about a specific area of the marketplace, which is the areas in which technology has really made an impact. Some businesses and some traditional processes, technology might be okay, might change a little bit, might create some better fluidity in process. It hasn't changed their marketplace drastically, but there are some technologies and some industries that are greatly impacted by technology. So maybe you want to share a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing a lot of AI and sort of a lot of technologies affect many areas of insurance, such as the underwriting piece, more of the operational piece, right? They're streamlining a lot of the operational piece and maybe the underwriting. You're not really seeing it on the sales side. I mean, you started to see some commoditization or some online selling of quote less complicated products like a home or an auto, right? But you're not really seeing that in the middle market commercial, and you're a big proponent of this. I mean, technology is not going to replace the human selling, right? At the end of the day, you're going to buy from people that you want and trust. You're not going to buy from a computer, right? AI and these technologies, no matter what business we're in, can enhance that, but it's not going to replace a one-on-one conversation. And especially for, in insurance, let's say, for the risk that, like, if you're spending $100,000 on a policy, you're not buying it from the computer. I don't buy it.
But how does the technology, how's it going to influence the insurance market going forward?
Right. So, I have some ideas around that. I mean, I've thought about it coming from public accounting. I believe that There's a lot of information in financials. So I believe there's opportunity for financial stewards, such as like an accountant or a CFO, to get involved in an area of insurance that they've really tended not to get involved in. And I think that's where there's going to be big change or change going forward. I think you've seen some of that on the underwriting and operational side, but you've not seen that on the sales side, which is really where I believe things can move. And I have some ideas there as well.
So other professionals, other trusted advisors, you're saying, what I'm hearing you say is that they will have an opportunity to get involved with, helping their clients make better decisions around the insurance, not just the insurance salesperson, but the team of trusted advisors will have a greater.
I think there's a huge opportunity for people that have shied away from insurance because of the opaqueness. It's really not transparent, so they've kind of thrown their hands up and not gotten involved. I think there's a tremendous opportunity for them to get involved because their clients are begging for someone to try to put a handle on the costs that they're seeing. They're seeing big increases on their P&L, and yet their advisors are typically not getting involved in this one aspect. So I think there is a tremendous opportunity. It's just a question of finding a way that doesn't take time away from their main practice, right? It's really, you have to come up with a way to enhance their value to their client, right?
Well, the technology in general is supposed to make all of our lives a little easier. And when it works, it's great. But when it doesn't, it becomes more cumbersome, takes more time, and, the frustration level is through the roof. Right. But I think it goes back to the team approach. I mean, you and I know each other about 15 years. And you've heard me talk about this for all of that time. We each need our own board of directors, especially as an entrepreneur. Negotiating with yourself sitting in your office is never helpful, right? You need a team approach. You need the holistic view of what's happening in the business. I've always suggested that all of the trusted advisors for any particular entrepreneur or CEO sit down in a room together and do that planning together. Right? Everybody has something valuable to contribute. And if you can be kind of the quarterback in that room, and there are opportunities through technology to support better decision making, I mean, that's a win for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. I really think that, the insurance industry has been very opaque for a reason. There are many obstacles to the entrepreneur that nobody really knows about. So, right. I think we spoke about it before, but like 90% of the business is renewal business. So it renews from year to year, 90%. So the insurance companies are not in the business of selling insurance. They're really in the business of renewals because 90% of the revenue is renewing. And that's at the detriment of the business owner, the entrepreneur. So I think that there's an excellent opportunity for the insurance to be part of that board of directors. I really think that because of the way it's been sold transactionally, like online or whatever, it's often misconstrued. And I believe, there's a lot of nuances to insurance that business owners don't understand and hurts them, right? And
if you look at just cyber insurance, right? Well, cyber insurance has to align with your technology map, and it has to align with your office processes and how you store data. And you know what? Sometimes the business owner is so far removed, they don't know what that even looks like.
And like you said, that technology is constantly changing. A lot of the problem with especially cyber insurance is that there's no real like mandatory ISO contract, so there's an insurance contract where they use standardized language. Cyber insurance is like the Wild West. So you don't really know even what it covers, right?
That's my point, right? Is that if the policy isn't aligned with the business, you think you're covered and something happens and all of a sudden you find out, nope, didn't have the right process in place. Nope, not covered for that. Right. And it's very hard to know if you didn't take the time up front.
Exactly. And that's why, I mean, really having that board of directors, as you mentioned, like to really, because when you're insurance in all aspects, not only cyber, but all aspects, whether it be your limits, your deductibles, everything should be aligned with your business strategy, right? And it's often not. And there's often gaps in coverage because of that, because it's done separate and apart from your other business advisor, right? So your other business advisors are telling you one thing, and then you go out and you buy insurance somewhere else, and there's really no connection,
Right.
which is really kind of what you were alluding to. And I think that's a huge.
So how is it that you help business owners define their actual risk, right? Because it's very different when I think I know my risk tolerance,
Right.
and then the professional turns around and says, but you're exposed here, 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 and here, and you're not taking that into consideration. So what are some of the things you help a business owner see, or what are the questions that you help them answer so they can make a good decision?
Right. I think, overall you have to look at, your total cost of risk. So that's going to include your premiums and deductibles and how much you're willing to sort of handle. But a lot of that is based upon questions of not only like, I mean, yes, I'm going to review an SIC code and understand the industry that they operate in and where there's likely exposures, right? But a lot of that is uncovered. The tolerance of risk is really uncovered in the discussion. So you're sitting down and saying the questions might really be like, like how do you contracts read for this or that, right? Because those are likely risks. I mean, a lot of it could be, the types of industries they're in, and the questions are very specific to what, maybe what they do. So a lot of it is, but a lot of it is exactly like understanding what they do, because you have to remember in the insurance business, right? So I'm a distributor, right? I don't price the product or make the product. The insurance company do. So
Sure.
I talk to you about insurance, but then I have to talk to the insurance company as to why you're the right risk for them. So part of me understanding what your exposures are is so I can sell you correctly to the insurance company, right? And that's what I think there's a disconnect where people don't really understand why the lead up time should not just be like, I have to renew this, can I find a better price? Really, all the things that lead up to it, understanding where my exposures are, what my risk tolerance is, but more importantly, like, how do I sell that to the right carrier?
Right, because some carriers might say, nope, completely uninsurable for us.
Right.
You have to find the carrier that's willing to take the risk.
Right. And a lot of times it's reframing. It's not, you're not lying, but you have to reframe things in a language they understand. Right.
Well, isn't one of the problems today, because we're still in the early AI days, is where people are being denied because it's all black and white, and if there's no human contact and context in application, whether it's, this is personal lines, whether it's life insurance or, I'm sure it applies to business insurance as well. AI, it's quick, it's efficient. They, dump the data into the database. AI immediately determines if they're a good fit or not. But that's not always the answer.
Well, the industry has certainly moved that way, where the connections I've had, with an underwriter, it used to be a lot more personal connections and so forth. However, AI or technology is certainly making a lot of those decisions right away or faster. But that's why it's important to work with, brokers that have those relationships, right?
Well, that's where the human factor comes in.
Right,
and
going
why,
back to our human factor.
right? That we can honestly say that AI is not going to replace people.
Right. So, I mean, the insurance carriers themselves, I think, have leaned on AI to make a lot of these decisions, like you're saying, oh, we're going to give them a no because it doesn't fit into my box. But they haven't gotten rid of like the regional direct, like they haven't gotten rid of the managers yet. So it's like, I will still call and say, you said no, but like why? Like,
and you should really reconsider this.
And right, exactly. And I reframe it and say, like, you're looking at it incorrectly. That loss occurred however many years ago, and now, now my client is doing safe, toolbox Tuesdays or safety,
Right.
and I think that, that's really the area where humans are still like, you can't take the human out of the process.
Well, that's the other thing, and it's a little bit of a jump, but it's a great opportunity for me to ask. So, as humans, right, we evolve, we make mistakes, we learn from them. And like I said earlier, nobody's career that I know has been very linear, right? Everybody's had a little bit of movement and learning and repositioning at some point. So, what are some of the things you've learned that help you do what you do today?
Well,
So
let's see. I guess personally, when I was younger, I used to sail. I used to race sailboats. I was involved in that. There was a lot of preparation before you actually ever raced. So you prepared at the dock and got things ready for the race ahead. And I think I learned a lot from the standpoint of not just jumping to a conclusion, to really sit down and take your time to understand all the different nuances and part of the process before you ever do the work. Professionally, I mean, we talked about earlier, I had many careers. So I started out in public accounting. When I was in finance in the hedge fund world, I think one of the things I learned how to do, or that I learned how to swallow, was really failure and pivoting. I think it's very important to try things and fail, see how, and like I think you mentioned before, see what broke and how to fix it, and maybe learn from that and pivot. I mean, I've certainly, pivoted my career, and like you said, nobody's career is linear. So.
yeah, it's interesting. I didn't know you raced.
Years ago, it was a long, long time ago.
Yeah, but that teaches so much about being able to pivot and change course and make real-time decisions, and huge lessons in that sport.
Yeah, it's changed. That's changed a lot too. I've seen that recently on TV.
Yeah.
Like sailing was never like that, but
Technology when sailing is really unbelievable.
it's really unreal. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I learned how to sail later as an adult. Been on a boat my whole life, but learning to sail was in my 30s. And it's
Right.
a very different experience than being on the water in a motorboat. And it's remarkable.
No, I definitely enjoyed it, and it was a great way. I mean, I was younger at the time, but I raced through college and enjoyed it. I met a lot of people.
Amazing.
Very
Amazing. Well, Neil, it's been great to have you. Thank you so much.
pleasure.
So how can folks find you? Of course, when we post this, we'll post how to reach you, but how can they find you?
Okay, well, you can certainly reach out by phone. My number is 631-844-5232. I am now with Gallagher, so you can have my email at Gallagher@hag.com. So it's Neil_Levy at hag.com, or Neil.Levy at assuredpartners.com, which was the previous entity.
Yeah. We'll definitely give everyone that contact information when we post, but it's been great. Thank you so much.
It's been great. Thank you.